Okay. Ready? Thank you for coming today. As you're aware, we did send out a hurricane letter, and then we had a member forum that was virtual that you were able to see on Touchtown, and we distributed the red folders which ask you to let us know what your hurricane plan is, and we also talked about knowing and developing your own plan. Well, hurricane season starts next week, June the 1st. The weather doesn't always do it exactly on June 1st, nor does it always end at the end of November, but that's the most likely time. So if you need any help filling out the information on the red folder, let Carrie know in Member Services, and she'll be glad to work with you on getting the right information on our records. The reason we need contact numbers, etc., as well as your plan is we will have limited occupancy wherever we go, which can change, as you're well aware if you've been through it. And we need to be able to contact you. We will contact you during an event if we evacuate through alert media, also your families as well. So if you have email, text, telephone, and family member contacts, we can send that out to you several times a day during evacuation. So Hilton Head has been very fortunate for many years. We only evacuated once, I think in 2000 or 2001, and nothing happened. And then Hurricane Matthew came along in 2016, and it was pretty devastating to the island. A lot of trees were cleared. Here at Tide Point, there was 9,700 cubic yards of trees removed, and then we're just one little area. So that was our first experience. We had an agreement with Marriott in Augusta to go there, which they promptly canceled, and we scrambled to find a Ramada Inn that was adequate in an emergency. And the following year, we had another evacuation required, and we don't evacuate until the governor declares an evacuation. Sometimes the governor will declare a medical evacuation, and we'll go into action there because we do have a medical facility, and typically that means senior living will need to go. So we don't evacuate unless the governor tells us to. And I'll show you this example of Hurricane Florence, which shows you how tenuous the entire evacuation process can be. Then we had a break in 2018. We didn't go, but we'll show you what we did in the preparation for that. And then in 2019, we experienced another evacuation, which was Dorian. And we were very fortunate there. There was very little, if any, damage at all, and we were able to dodge the bullet. With Matthew in 2016, it was largely a wind event, which is very dangerous. We had trees everywhere all over the island, and it took the emergency people several days to clear their way in to where it was safe for people to be here. And as you recall, we had to check the drinking water. We had to have that tested, so there were some delays even after coming back, as well as electrical power. So in Irma in 2017, it was largely a water event, which was flood and rising water, which basically came in and went out. Our biggest problem there was dead fish, which were all removed before you got back. So, and then Dorian was very little, if any, damage. I think we had a little water in maybe 2 garages. Okay, so Florence came along September the 6th, 2018. We started to study that on Thursday. We began to have our meetings. We reviewed all of your member evacuation plans and contacted any members who did have incomplete or were changing plans so we could get an accurate count of who was going on their own, which is what we recommend, or who needed to go with us as a group. That was our first thing. Okay, if we had a hurricane today, only 60% of you have completed the form. So it's really good for you to get that form in and complete as soon as possible. Okay? And if you're not sure about what you want to do, see Carrie and her team, and they'll be glad to help you work out what it is best for you. So we began to call hotel and bus contracts. We also have contracts with several bus companies. We rent a truck. That's typically for the care center medication carts and equipment that we need when we relocate. Food and water contacts. In case we stay here, we will need food and water supplies here. Also, some of you may remember at the Ramada Inn in Dorian, we also ended up running the food and beverage as well. They weren't capable of handling our crowd, so we went ahead and brought our kitchen crew in. We ordered food for that, so we began that planning early on. Fuel and generator providers, we do have a large generator. We always make sure that's full during the season. Hospital contacts, our skilled nursing goes to a hospital in Augusta typically. We also have some arrangements in Columbia if we need to go in that direction. And ambulance services for anybody who may need it. Pharmacy is another thing. When we get into the warning period, we're going to ask you to make sure you have medications and you know what your medications are, and any other medical concerns you may have, you need to be ready for. Okay? We'll help you with any of that, but you need to be ready to, basically, you need to be ready for at least 2 weeks. We haven't had to be gone for more than 2 weeks, but during Irma, our sister community in Naples, Bentley Village, was in Orlando for 2 months. So it can happen, you know. We've been very fortunate. So we also contact medical supply companies so that we have all of those things, and we want to make sure we have availability wherever we go. Okay, the next day on Friday, we assigned team assignments. If you go with us, you'll have a color. That color will match the bus, your suitcase, everything. We try to keep it as simple. You'll have a color. It'll be on a lanyard. There'll be a color for your suitcases, and there'll be a color for the bus name, so that way we can keep it very efficiently consistent. We continue to analyze the storm, to listen to all the emergency information the next day that we received from the county, the state, and also the National Weather Service. Member Services, Carrie's team continues to reaffirm how many members we're talking about, who they are, who we need to know more from, etc., and begins to divide groups up among the staff members. This will all be invisible to you. Okay, so that Saturday, the storm was pretty far out, but as you can see, we were right down the middle. So we looked at it, And we want to make a decision somewhere up in here or sooner to be able to determine what our path is. What happened in Hurricane Irma, we were here in Augusta and we had a tropical storm there. So it was wet. We had a great time in Matthew. Everybody came back talking about how fun it was. And then in Irma, they couldn't really leave the hotel much because there was a tropical storm. So it was much less enchanting. Okay, Saturday, we began the preparations for securing the community. We added sandbags where needed. We made sure all windows were locked. Outdoor furniture or anything that would fly from your house is secured. We confirmed with security that they'll have 24-hour staffing while we're away. And we lower the ponds to reduce any flooding that may affect any homes. We start the hotel room assignments and making sure that your family knows where you're going, what you're doing, etc. With Alert Media, those of you who have used it know that your family will be informed the entire time if you have given us the information required on that form. Okay, on Sunday, the storm was still pretty far out. It was slow moving, but the forecast of landfall were changing. We prepared to evacuate further. We secured lodging and transportation and were finalized and ready by Sunday. Monday, we again confirmed our readiness. Governor McMaster issued a medical evacuation at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Then by 3 o'clock, he was evacuating all coastal communities. We were informed all members through the Alert Media, the community app, the Touchdown, and paper. So this was where he was evacuating. This is Hilton Head right here, and this was the danger zone as of Tuesday. So Monday, we began to have all of our calls with our company. We have a lot of company support whenever there's an evacuation at hand. They check to make sure we have everything. They bring in resources after the storm, which we had, I think, 5 directors of maintenance that came in after Matthew to help us get ready quickly. And they did assessments of all the homes as well. So V will activate notifications on the website, so your family can also go to the website and see any updates that need to be done. And we'll typically update those several times a day during the hurricane. We'll be sending out the Alert Media, but in addition, on the V website, they'll be giving information too. So if your family happens not to be in your information, then they can receive that information from the website as well. So they make sure we have everything we need. We have a satellite phone, which we haven't ever needed, but we keep testing it every year. And it's good to have if communication towers were destroyed, etc. The evacuation was announced to begin at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, and we encouraged people who were going on their own to their own arrangements to go ahead and start going. We had availability at hotels. These particular ones were in Columbia. Availability on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, the projections began to improve. We'd already told people to consider leaving. Okay, so we had, I think, 10 or 12 people who went to Columbia and either turned around and came back or stayed the night and came back. So our care center plans, which were planned in Columbia moved to Augusta because we could house everybody comfortably. And then people began to leave on Tuesday. As I said, things got better, not to keep you in suspense.
Mandatory evacuation is effective what day?
It was effective on Wednesday, I believe, let's say. Yep, Wednesday the 12th. So we also began to help anybody. We did everything from make sure people had enough clothes in their suitcases to catch cats that had escaped under the bed, to get everybody ready, pets in containers, etc. So Tuesday afternoon at 8 at that night, we were a little bit out of the woods. We already had people who decided to go on their own in transit. We were able to contact them and tell them to come back. The governor, the next morning, decided that evacuation was not necessary. So we conferred with our team at V, confirmed the messaging, and then communicated that through Alert Media, the app, and Touchtown. And all members and family members who had registered numbers were notified that we did not plan to evacuate. And then we began to cancel accommodations, buses, supplies, etc. And we began to help members with unpacking. So we continued to watch the storm path cautiously. We met several times a day, and then the storm began to turn westward again. So as you can see, we were back like barely in the cone, but still dangerous. So then we decided we would potentially go to Orlando. So we began to plan a trip to Orlando. I remember spending all night with the hotel salesperson in Orlando negotiating everything: meals, housing, how many people, etc. And so we reviewed the new plan with the V, and the governor did not change his evacuation order, so we didn't need to evacuate, which was wonderful. So we were extremely fortunate in that one. Friday, Florence made landfall in North Carolina. As you can see, we kind of barely squeezed out of that one. So we're very fortunate. The reason I'm showing you this is that we need to, as my boss says during the pandemic, remain nimble. You have to be ready for change, okay? The way you can be ready for change is when we say pack your bags, get your medications, and fill up with gas, don't wait 2 days, okay? It's very important that we are ready. What I love to do is this: get ready and not do it, okay? For many years, we were able to experience that, but then we've had 3 occasions, 2 which were very dangerous, where we did need to. The other item is, when we tell you we're evacuating, you must evacuate. You can make a plan on your own, you tell us your plan, but you cannot stay here. We're licensed as a continuing care retirement community and subject to their rules and regulations, and you don't have an option of staying here. Now, every year when we do evacuate, there are 3 or 4 people we have to convince. And time, they know more than the governor and the weather service and me. And we have to convince those people to leave. Now, that takes hours of our time to do that. So my communication to you now is, we're not joking when we say you need to leave. So it's not negotiable. You need to leave the community. We will lock off the community. Security will be here through the event, and they will not admit anybody back into the community if we've evacuated. So, Carrie, you want to talk about anything? We do have a new guide that goes out today, which will have checklists and all those kind of things. We didn't want to get it lost in your red folder, but this is even more information about how to plan for your evacuation. So you'll be getting these today in your box. Anything you want to talk about?
Just reiterate to get your plans in early. Don't wait until the last minute, because if you wait, we might not have a room for you if you decide to go with us. So go ahead and get your plans in early, get them in now.
And the same thing with changing plans. Please don't change them when we call for an evacuation or when the storm is impending. Okay, we need to have accurate counts to get people in. And we understand everybody's conditions are changing. You may have health requirements that require you to go with us where you didn't plan on that. So we do understand that. We're going to make accommodations, but we're asking you to keep that front of mind all the way to the end of November.
Yeah. If
Okay.
you have the opportunity to go with family or friends or to go to a family member to stay, that's the best opportunity that you have. We would want to be comfortable, and if we wound up in a situation where we could be evacuated for weeks at a time or for months at a time, you'd probably want to be with your family.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Cash is good to have. Medications should always be kept up to date during the season. Yeah, that's important. And that'll be in this guide. There'll be a lot of suggestions in the guide to things you may not have thought about. Yes, sir.
From discussions with other folks, apparently when you went to Augusta, you supplied the food, but this says we're responsible for supplying our own meals and to bring cash and provide receipts. Is that correct?
Yep. We're going to do our best to get everything provided. You know, what we are required to do is to give you your one meal a day or so. We're going to try to do better than that. We have done better than that. But you may, depending on how you evacuate, if you go on your own, save all receipts, okay? We have been very fortunate in getting insurance to reimburse all of it. I mean, it's been crazy good. I can't promise that'll always be the case, but with the evacuation insurance, we have been able to get meals covered, but save all your receipts. Save hotel receipts, save food receipts, save transportation receipts, mileage, know your mileage. So those are going to be important if you go with us or you don't. If you're going with us on a bus, you don't need to keep the mileage, and please don't try to turn it in. Okay, but if you're going on your own, keep your mileage, because that can be reimbursed either by your insurance or by our insurance. And we've been really fortunate on that. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's important, you may have already said it, and I might have missed it. I think it's important for people to understand that when you have a mandatory evacuation and you stay, that there's no services for you. No police, no EMS. So if you have a heart attack or a medical problem, you are here without any help.
Great.
There's no potable water.
Yeah.
Could you repeat
Yeah.
that question?
I sure will. She said, please remember that if you, which this is not an option to stay. First, we'll just get that off the table. But if you were in your own home and you opted to stay, there are no services. There could be no water, no electricity for days. There's no police. There's no emergency. The hospital closes. So you really need to make sure you get somewhere that's safe and get there early. So great point. Mr. Whitecamper?
Do we have to do anything at our homes to prepare to turn off the water, turn off the electricity, or?
Good point. You do not need to turn off anything, maybe an appliance or two if you're worried about it. There's a good kind of neat little trick for your freezer and refrigerator. You can put a cup and freeze it in your refrigerator and put a coin on top. That way when you return, if the coin has gone down, your power has been out. And you probably ought to throw that meat that you've been keeping for 2 years away. Or your Tide Point ice cream. Yes, sir.
If Augusta is not available, what would be our next source of the location?
Columbia is one. Aiken is another one that we've explored. Aiken, South Carolina. North Augusta is an area we look at. Columbia, if it's coming from the south up from Florida, Columbia is a pretty good alternative. We may be in 6 different hotels. Okay, and in that case, you definitely would want to save receipts, etc., so that we can do that. We'll take care of the hotel piece, but meals, etc., may not be in the hotel. So you may need to be on your own for meals, okay, if we go to Columbia. Or even other, in North Augusta, which is one option, they would provide the food and beverage. If we go to the Marriott in Augusta, they'll provide the food and beverage, and we'll work all that out with them to have group eating times. If you opt not to do those all the time, just save your receipts, okay? Any other?
Tom,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned in your memo that we may be going to another B facility.
That's a potential,
What's
not
that?
likely. Okay, in Florida, we had, and that letter is from Darrell Baltimore, our Vice President of Operations. We have 4 of our communities that are vulnerable. Okay, other communities in Florida sometimes will just go to that community. We could have a worst case scenario where we could evacuate to another V community. Probably would be Naples or possibly the one in Lantana, depending on who had availability. And that may happen also with skilled care and with assisted living if we were having to go long term. For instance, when Bentley Village spent 2 months in Orlando, their assisted living people went to our community in Lantana. So we keep those options open as well. Any other questions for the good of the group? It's going to be okay. Okay. We now have done it 3 times. I call this one a half a time, because I can't believe we did more work on this than we did on Matthew.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's the best case scenario. We get really ready, and then we don't go. Yes, Ms. Benjamin.
If you do not plan to evacuate with our community, you're going to go off on your own, you should make reservations as soon as you hear a hurricane might be coming this way. Otherwise, you won't find a reservation. You can always
Okay.
cancel it.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that recommendation? If you do plan to evacuate on your own, make sure you do have reservations as far in advance. I mean, I will say during Hurricane Irma, things got a little squirrely. Not Tide Point members, but local Hilton Head people were making reservations in every hotel they could think of and then picking one. Please don't do that. If you're going on your own, get one and stay with it. We had people who traveled all the way to I want to say Delaware, at one point. Because what they did was say, okay, we're going to evacuate, let's go have some fun. You know,
We had
let's
someone who
go
went to-
ahead and take a week.
Someone went to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
somebody else who went to Nova Scotia. They just said, you know what? There won't be a hurricane there. We need a vacation anyway. Let's go. Yes, ma'am.
If we did have to evacuate, where do we all meet?
Where would you meet?
Yes, here,
Here at the clubhouse.
what do we do with our cars?
Your car is probably going to be most secure at your home in your garage, and we'll help you get it there. What we have done also in the past is pick people up at their home. We'll just do, Shoreline Drive, Freshwater, etc. Or you can bring your luggage here. We'll make sure it's properly tagged and get it on the right bus. But your car is going to probably be safest in your garage if you're in a cottage or veranda. I'm not promising that safety, but that's probably safer than leaving it out somewhere else. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
What about the car downstairs in the parking spot?
The cars under the villas and under the clubhouse have been safe. I can say that.
Yeah.
There's a potential for flooding. That's why it's open under there.
That's why you have
That's why
insurance.
everything here is 14 feet up. There's always potential for flooding. And seawater rise, but that's slower.
You wouldn't suggest we make a reservation at the Ritz-Carlton?
That's a great point. Okay. We will, our insurance will pay up to a reasonable amount. So you may not get fully reimbursed at the Ritz, but it'll be a reasonable amount. In the past, they have reimbursed everybody on evacuation despite where you went. Okay. However, if there's abuse, they're probably going to drop it down to an average.
Is there a baggage limitation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's in the information, the documentation we sent out to you all.
Yeah.
It's in that documentation. It's
What
also
is it,
going to be
one
in this guide.
suitcase?
One suitcase and one carry-on.
Yeah.
And if you have
Just
a
like the
pet.
airlines.
Yeah. If you have a pet, your carry-on is your pet.
Yeah. Yeah. And you will be responsible for your pet the entire time. Okay. The pets, if you travel with us on a bus, the pet's going to need to be in a carrier or possibly in a separate vehicle. So pet owners, be thinking about how you're going to care for that pet in an evacuation. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to know what sort of a bus we would be transporting, like a coach or a school bus.
No. Good point. What kind of a bus will we be traveling in if you go with us? It will be a coach. Those of you who have traveled with us, they were pretty nice buses, right? I'm not going to rule out that we may need to use school buses in an emergency, but we haven't. With the 3 times that we've done it, we've been able to arrange nice coach service. And they were timely. Yes, ma'am.
Will the wellness nurses go with us?
Oh, yes. As you're aware, one of the first things we do in the hotel is set up a wellness center. And it runs 24 hours a day. So any medical help you may need during that time, we're there. We also let the hospitals there know, because our skilled people may be in a hospital and have been in the past. We've been really fortunate there where the hospital in Augusta, and we used several different hospitals, had new wings, had open areas, so we were able to put everybody in one area, which was really good for our skilled and assisted. So yes, that's a good point. We do have a wellness center. It'll open, they're part of the advanced team, so it'll be set up even before you get there. and they'll run 24 hours for your safety. Okay? Great questions. Anybody have any other questions you might be thinking about? Mr. Cortez.
Some people use verbs for their pharmacy, and imagine if they are evacuated, and verbs evacuates too. How do you get hold of those prescriptions you need?
Okay.
Can we answer that one?
As long as you have your prescription, you'll be able to get it at other pharmacies as well. The question was, if we use Burke's and we evacuate and Burke's evacuate, how are you going to get your prescriptions? If you know your prescriptions, if you don't know them, bring a bottle, right? Just bring the bottle.
A pharmacy will only refill your prescription if it's in the original bottle. So make
Yeah.
sure that if we evacuate, you need to bring the original bottle with you.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that? If you need medication when we evacuate or you take regular medication, please have the original bottle for refills. I mean, I know in previous evacuations, we've spent a considerable amount of time at the pharmacies. That's one of the things that we do. And as well as supplies. You know, when you don't know how long you're going to be gone, we're doing laundry at one place because we need to stay for 10 days, I guess. Yeah. And people didn't bring enough. So, just like when you're flying, one bag and one carry-on. Okay? Or if you go on your own, you can put your tapestries in there, your valuable artwork, your jewelry, whatever, if you're in your car. Okay? Anything else for the good of the group or individual concerns? Peace and love. Thanks for coming.